a far higher percentage of the vote than in any other state, went to Blaine. But the prohibitionist defection kept the Republican nominee's margin over Cleveland under 1%. The full accounting revealed a race that was breathtakingly close. Cleveland had won the popular vote with 48.85% of the total to Blaine's 48.28%. The margins in the Electoral College were wider. Cleveland triumphed 219 to 182, but even that was misleading. The Democratic nominee had won by 37 votes, 36 of which came from his native New York. And there Cleveland had won by only 1,149 votes. In neighboring Connecticut, he won the state's 6 electoral votes by fewer than 1,300 votes. Had fewer than 2,500 voters in the Northeast had a change of heart on November 4th, 1884, James G. Blaine would have been headed to the White House, and Cleveland would have become a historical footnote. If Grover Cleveland allowed himself a moment of ebullience on becoming President of the United States, it is lost to history. We do know that 2 emotions gripped him in the immediate aftermath of the election. The first, a near universal sentiment among those who feel the weight of the office descend upon their shoulders, was a sense of wonder at and reverence for the responsibility he was about to inherit. To his friend the journalist Harold Frederick, then stationed in London as a correspondent for the New York Times, he wrote, "Imagine a man standing in my place, with positively no ambition for a higher position than I now hold, and in constant apprehension that he may be called upon to assume burdens and duties the greatest and highest that a human being can take upon himself. I cannot look upon the prospect of success in this campaign with any joy, but only with a very serious kind of awe. Is this right?" To Shan Bissell, he wrote, "I look upon the 4 years next to come as a dreadful, self-inflicted penance for the good of my country. I can see no pleasure in it, and no satisfaction, only a hope that I may be of service to my people." The second sentiment, also expressed only in private, and even then only to his most intimate friends, was a new one for the heretofore imperturbable Cleveland: bitterness. He had, as governor, began to develop a distaste for the press. When the New York Times cited an excursion to Newport, Rhode Island, as proof that he was overly fond of junketeering, he replied incredulously that he hadn't even made the trip. Alongside of the very columns announcing my presence in Newport were statements of doings here in this chamber showing that I was here at work. These papers keep well informed. That attitude had calcified with the Halpin story, but while the press had earned his enmity, an even darker cloud hung over his feelings for the city of Buffalo, where the anger was mixed with a palpable sense of betrayal. In the same above-quoted letter to Bissell, he wrote, "I am busy all day long receiving congratulations of friends in person, while through the mail and telegraph they are counted by the thousand. It's quite amusing to see how profuse the professions of some who stood aloof when most needed. I intend to cultivate the Christian virtue of charity toward all men, except the dirty class that defiled themselves with filthy scandal and ballism. I don't believe God will ever forgive them, and I am determined not to do so." That astringency remained with him for the rest of his life. For the nearly 25 years Cleveland had left on the planet, he would barely set foot in Buffalo ever again, and then only briefly. Not that the president-elect would have been in a particularly nostalgic mood under any circumstances. As he prepared to depart Albany for Washington, there was an anticipation that, given the gravity of the moment, he might leave New York's capital city with a flourish befitting a future president. It was an utterly reasonable expectation, if you didn't know Grover Cleveland. On January 5th, 1885, just under 2 months before he was to be sworn in as the nation's 22nd president, Cleveland transmitted his final message to the New York legislature. The long-awaited valedictory read in full, "I hereby resign the office of governor of the state of New York."